Hi, welcome to Real Film Snobs. I'm Angela Yeager. We have a special episode for you this week. I have guest host Brian Hart here in the studio with me. Welcome, Brian.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So, Brian, you're a longtime friend of the show. Of course, most people out there in TV land and web land and radio land might know Brian. All the lands might know Brian as our special Sundance Film Festival correspondent. He always comes to us every year, but he's also been a longtime guest host on the show as well. Yeah. And film snob. Despite his love of comic book movies, I still allow him to be on the show because he also likes other good movies on occasion. So and we picked a very eclectic mix of movies.
We have a good mix.
I think it is a good mix. Yeah, it is.
We have a mix.
It's a mix for sure. So we'll move on to our first film, which you saw a clip for at the top of the show, and that is Kathryn Bigelow's Detroit, which is based on the Algiers motel incident during the riots of 1967. Detroit tells the tense story of a group of hotel guests who are subjected to a night of terror at the hands of police. And of course, this is based on a true story, and it is based on eyewitness accounts of the incident. Kathryn Bigelow, of course, one of America's great filmmakers right now, has been on a steady roll with The Hurt Locker and Zero Dark 30, her last two films. And interestingly enough, Zero Dark 30, a film that also had where torture played heavily into the movie, and in that case it was about the dealings with in Afghanistan. This time around, of course, the torture takes on a much different meaning. We have a great cast here, including John Boyega as Melvin, who kind of plays sort of an interesting role. He's sort of in between all of this. He is not with the cops, the white cop, mostly white police force of Detroit. He's a security guard. He's kind of an honest citizen who's just trying to do his due diligence, but he kind of gets wrapped up in the events of the night. And then a great performance by Algie Smith as Larry Reed, who's the lead singer of the group The Dramatics, which is a real group that was trying to be signed to Motown. And they get, Algie Smith's character of Larry Reed gets caught up in all this things that happen at the Algiers motel. Of course, the film seems very timely with what's been going on, and even though it takes place in 1967, I could tell the audience watching it with us, and we saw it together, that it felt like it could have just been yesterday, which is rather unfortunate. I thought it was an extremely powerful film. It is unfortunately not a perfect film. I wish it was. Most of the flaws are not in the performances or the directing. It's mostly in the story. There's some continuity issues and some weird gaps in the story where I felt like I was a little confused about what was going on or what happened to certain characters. These are kind of minor quibbles overall, but I thought it was overall just a pretty amazing movie. So I'm curious to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, I liked it a lot. I thought it was very powerful. I really liked the use of kind of handheld footage to keep it real raw and almost like a documentary style, and they even mixed it in with some real footage of the incidences, and then mixed it in with the rest of the stuff that they shot. So it was it just felt really real and tense, like that tension that they built throughout the film. You could just feel it.
Yeah, it almost never lets up. And there's a reason the movie has to be the length it is, because I don't think, towards the end, I kind of thought, I'm not sure how much more I could take. Right. Or just imagine how the people in that hotel felt. But I felt like the audience was being was being asked, you can't look away. I'm not going to let you look away. You're going to sit here and watch what's happening to these people. And the camera doesn't look away, and it's really, really hard to watch at times. And she does intersperse, footage of the actual riots of Detroit, news footage, really seamlessly. It's actually one of the better jobs I've seen with that, because of the way she shoots with kind of an intensity like news. It makes it, blend seamlessly. And the performances, I just thought, were pretty across the board fantastic.
Yeah, really good.
From the police who are not sympathetic at all
Yep.
to all the people in the hotel. To again, John Boyega, who playing Melvin, who, and then they kind of give you a code at the end of what happened to everyone. And
Right.
it does go into a trial at the very end. There is an actual courtroom trial about what happened, but that's kind of glossed over. It goes really quickly, and I can see why it's not a movie about the trial, and I think before it starts we all know what's going to happen. There was no surprises there, but because she spends so long, it's more, almost half the movie is on the extended interrogation and torture sequence. So that's a lot for
there's
people.
not a lot of cuts when it actually is in that moment.
And you're in a tight hallway,
Yeah.
and so the narrowness of the confines combined with the heat, and you just feel like you can't escape as an audience member, and that I think was purposeful on her part. There has been some criticism in the film that it's exploitation of a white filmmaker, and I've seen some criticism online. But the thing is, I feel like I felt trapped with the hotel guests. And so I didn't feel like you were sympathizing with the police at all, or that you were feeling like you were taking their spot in terms of, I feel like it was the opposite. Like we were almost being subjected to and held prisoner there, just like they were. So how many stars are you going to give it out of 4 stars?
I liked it a lot. I'm giving it 4 stars. Yeah.
You're giving it 4 out of 4?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
I thought it was great.
Yeah,
it's a movie that needs to be seen by most everybody, and I have a feeling it's going to do so in the box office. I think the numbers are pretty low already.
Is it? Yeah.
We need
I'm not
to see
surprised.
this.
It's hard. I mean, it's a hard sell.
hard to
Even I'm
watch,
sure I'm
yeah.
describing it. There's a lot of people at home thinking, I don't want to see that. You know, it's too real. But it's a piece of American history. If you're a history buff, you really should see it, because it's a piece of American history.
Yeah, it's a part I wasn't super familiar with. I knew that there's different riots in cities, but I didn't know specifics of it. So it's a hard lesson to learn.
Yeah,
you
it's
feel
pretty
really tragic about the whole thing. So I liked it a lot.
Yeah, and I've liked, all of her films from Zero Dark 30, which I didn't like as much as Hurt Locker. Hurt Locker is just an amazing movie. She just seems to be on a roll with just making really excellent films based on real life, but sort of with a lot of action. I mean, I will say this about Detroit: it's not boring.
No.
you won't fall asleep.
Yeah. So what'd you give it?
I'm giving it 3.5 out of 4.
Right.
Yeah, so that's very high for me. But I was on the fence. I was almost going to give it. I was giving it a 4 when I walked out of the theater. My initial reaction was 4, but there was just some, I kept thinking about some holes in the story and some, feelings I had about, well, what happened there, and whatever happened with that. Why did the cop get let back on the streets, and what happened to the original case of the person he was supposed to have shot? I just kept bugging me. So. Anyway, so we should move on. So you're
all right. Let's move on. So you're going to see a clip of The Dark Tower. All right, that was a clip of The Dark Tower, and it's directed by Nikolaj Arcel, I think.
Good job with that.
I'm so good with pronunciations, and then I get
something
these
all
ones.
the Brians have in common.
Yeah. So anyway, this movie is about the last gunslinger, and he is in a kind of this war for Mid-Earth, I believe it's called, or Mid-World and our Earth, and he's fighting the Man in Black. And it's all up to him. He's the last one of his kind, and it's all about stopping this Dark Tower, and if the Dark Tower falls, then Earth falls, I think. I'm still not quite sure what the heck was going on. It's mediated by a young 11-year-old that at first he's having these nightmare visions and drawing these pictures, and the family thinks he's completely crazy. And it turns out he's not crazy, that he is seeing all of these people, and people that have their faces kind of stitched back on to blend in. And he finds a little portal. He goes to Mid-Earth, whatever it's called.
I think isn't
Mid.
like
I have it
Middle
somewhere.
Earth.
Mid-World.
Mid-World.
It is
I
Mid-World.
feel like Mid-Earth or Middle Earth sounds like it should be Lord of the Rings.
Yeah,
or something.
well, could be. But and then they end up back on real Earth, not Mid-Earth, and then fight here. And it's starring some really good people. It has Idris Elba, who I love, and Matthew McConaughey, which is great, and the young kid is played by Tom Taylor. So star-studded cast. It's based off an 8-volume series by Stephen King.
So it's an hour and 35-minute movie.
An hour and 35 for 8 books.
Yeah.
Condensed into 1 hour-and-a-half movie. So there's your first red flag of many. So this movie's kind of a mess.
Yeah, I know. I kind of tell. Usually we try not to give it away. Either my usual co-host Brian Michael or this Brian. We try not to, even though we're sitting next to each other. I think we did a pretty good job. We saw all the movies together.
Right.
And I don't think we. Yeah. But this one, when it ended, I noted there was like 4 or 5 screenwriters, and you said, I think they each wrote a different story, and they just smashed it all together into one movie. Man. Yeah, it's kind of a mess. Great actors, as you mentioned. Even Matthew McConaughey, playing kind of chewing the scenery a bit, but I thought he was fine. And Idris Elba, you know how I feel about him. I think he's wonderful, and he's fine. He does a fine job as a gunslinger. There's nothing wrong with the casting of this movie. That is not the problem with this movie. The problem with this movie is everything else. So the direction lacks imagination. It feels very by the book. It feels like someone, I don't know this director. I don't know if he's done TV or what his story is, but it feels like the lack of an auteur. It feels like someone who doesn't have a lot of imagination. It feels a little bit like TV, in fact, to me, and not good TV, not HBO, Netflix quality TV, but like bad TV. And the story, as someone who hasn't read all the books, but I even imagine for those who have, it's got to be infuriating because there's probably, I just talked to a friend of mine in Corvallis over the weekend. She has read all the books. She's like, well, Jake, who's the kid, he's just he's not the main character in the books apparently, but they made him the main character in this movie. So there's a bunch of other characters, she said, so that were cut entirely. A woman in a wheelchair and a bunch of other people. Well, you'd have to. Into one. Yeah, so you'd have to, but maybe pick one of the books then, or pick one section of the story to tell. I don't know. So, so there's that, and as you mentioned, the story is kind of all over the place.
Yeah, I never knew what was going on. I was kind of like, what? I can't follow. And it's interesting
because I've heard writing and bad directing.
Yeah, the people that haven't read the books have no idea they can't follow it, and the people that read the books think it's too simplistic and it's too basic, and they're upset.
So it's hitting no man's land.
Which is a bad.
If you haven't read the books, you still have to make a movie that people can follow that haven't read the books, because it is a movie, it's not a book. Yeah. And so it always bugs me when people say, oh, it was true to the book or whatever. In this case, that's not even true. But they'll say, well, I liked it because it was sort of like the book. And it's like, well, I don't care. If it doesn't make sense to me as a viewer who hasn't read the book, then it's not a good movie.
It's funny, there were times that I was watching the movie and thought, oh, that's awful. But I bet that's really good in the book when they can explain it for, pages and pages and go into details and reasonings and emotions. But you can't do that in a 3-minute action scene. They try to weave in like this heavy story about, his father and he was a gunslinger and all of this.
But it's like 5 minutes.
And they brush over it so quickly. And I was like, I bet that's really cool in the book.
Well, you can tell when you're bored in a movie too, when you're thinking about things like, so Matthew McConaughey's character can just walk by someone and go, stop breathing, die, whatever, to anybody.
Right.
But his point is to destroy the world, right? So I'm like, well, why do you need the Dark Tower to come down if you can just tell everybody to die? Why don't you just say everybody die and then it's done? Yeah. Like, what's the point then of going through all this Dark Tower business? Anyway, so, okay, I'm giving it 1 star.
You're giving it 1? Yeah, I gave it 2. Probably should get 1.5, I think.
Do you want to give it 1.5 then?
Because of the actors.
You're giving
I like them both. I bump it up to 2, but it's a low 2.
It's a low 2.
Now
it's a low 2.
I have heard that this
more like
is
a 1.5.
gonna be a TV show and a series, and if done well, it would probably be a really good TV series.
No,
if it has a budget.
It sounds like there's quite a bit of depth and more characters and things to explore.
But why they had to write this movie doesn't do it any favors.
No,
that's for sure.
No.
So anyway.
Yeah, the casting's about the best thing in it. So.
Yeah. All right, I think we have another clip. So check it out. All right, you just watched a clip for The Glass Castle. And this is directed by Destin Daniel Cretton, I think. Anyway, this is about a young girl, Jeanette, and it's a kind of a coming-of-age story with her very dysfunctional family. Her father's an alcoholic. Her mother is this really eccentric artist. She has some siblings, but they're kind of these nomads that move from place to place, running away from the government and bills and every other kind of responsibility. And the dad tries to kind of create this world and sense of wonder to distract them from the poverty that they live in. And for a while, he does a pretty good job of it, but then the kind of the alcoholism and all of the other things catch up with him. And so then it kind of churns. And this is actually also based off a true story, just like The Dark Tower. So.
Just like that. I was like also like The Dark Tower.
Yes, of course, yes.
It's based on Jeanette Wall's memoir. Correct?
Yes, that's right.
Her novel or memoir. Yeah.
Yes. So this, I enjoy this movie. It also has a great cast. So Woody Harrelson and Brie Larson and Naomi Watts play the three main characters. So Woody Harrelson is the dad, and Naomi Watts is the mom, and Brie Larson. I am actually. It's funny that I'm not super familiar with Brie Larson. She's kind of getting all this buzz lately since she won her Oscar, but I haven't seen too many of her movies. So this is the first movie that I even looked through her cast list, and I've missed a lot of them. And she's going to be in a Marvel movie, so I'm my interest has been piqued.
You'll see one of the not so good ones then.
Yeah.
Destin Daniel Cretton, who directed this, I directed Short Term 12, which was Brie Larson's big kind of breakthrough performance. And it was in my top 10 of the year. It is a fantastic movie. You should see it. It's a great little indie movie, but it was her big breakout role. It was the movie where everyone said, who is this woman? She's amazing in it. And so he directed that. This is a much bigger budget, obviously.
Sure.
That was a very low budget movie, but a fantastic one. Better movie than this one, I would say, overall, although I would say this one has some great charms. I think Woody Harrelson pretty much almost steals the show in this movie. I think I would be surprised if it's a little early in the year for Oscar talk.
It's a strange release, the timing of the
for
release
that,
is a
but
strange.
I wouldn't be surprised if his name isn't mentioned at Oscar time, because this has kind of got that feeling of an Oscar type performance on it. He's got the alcoholism, he's got the range of emotions, he's playing a different kind of character than he normally plays. I think I wouldn't be surprised, and he is really quite good, so he's well deserving of that. Naomi Watts isn't given as much to do as the mother. It's really the father story. He's obviously the one that made a big impact on her. Right. The movie is stronger when I think it's focusing on the kids. It's told sort of in flashbacks with Brie Larson as an adult, as the 1989 version of Jeanette Walls when she's a gossip columnist in New York, and she's got this kind of boring but stable boyfriend who's like a New York finance guy, and she's grappling with her past with her parents, and she kind of, flashes back to stuff from her childhood. And I feel like the stuff from the childhood was a lot stronger than her as an adult, which is strange because Brie Larson's a great actress, but she isn't given a lot to do in the adult scenes other than sort of like reflect on what happened to her.
Yeah, she's very stuffy and she's embarrassed of her family.
Yeah.
And that life that she lived.
So you don't get a good sense of who she became as a woman, and that kind of bothered me. That would be a weakness in the movie, but the parts of the family I thought were really well told and I felt like I was there almost. The way it's filmed, it was really poignant, sometimes very hard to watch.
Very hard to watch.
Sort of like in Short Term 12, which is also about kids, in a foster setting. It doesn't shy away from horrible things that can happen to kids, and I think that's very powerful. So.
Yeah, and I kept thinking it was going to get worse and worse. Again, this tension would build. I'm not familiar firsthand with this kind of lifestyle, so it's very foreign to me. But I was just like, oh my gosh, don't let it happened, and like all of these moments where you're just cringing and you're hoping that the dad will get it together, or they finally find a place that they can live, and it's just, but I guess it's real life sometimes for some people. So it's a hard movie to watch. I'm not going to purchase it and rewatch it over and over.
Right.
But I can definitely recommend it.
It has some poignant, nice humanistic moments. Yeah. I definitely would say it's not like hard to watch, for me at least, on the level of something like Detroit.
Right.
But it's but it's definitely a poignant.
Makes you a little uncomfortable.
Yeah. How many stars are you giving it?
I'm giving that one a 3.
3 stars. Yes, I agree.
All right.
We're almost the same on everything. This is a problem. We'll have to see if we can
get
a big fight going.
You tried to bring me down on the Dark Tower, but I'm
Well,
sticking with my 2.
I wasn't trying to. You sounded like that sounded like a,
A low
1.5.
2.
Yeah, a low 2. Even though I didn't like anything about it. Okay. Okay. So we'll move on to our next segment, which is the streaming pick. And our streaming pick is Train to Busan, and this is the South Korean film about a businessman and his young daughter who are trapped on a train as a zombie apocalypse breaks out.
Another documentary.
Yes, another documentary. All true stories tonight. Detroit, true story. Glass Castle, true story. Train to Busan. It's true story.
true,
Zombie
yeah.
apocalypse broke out if you haven't seen it on the news. Well, anyway, I won't go there. So this is a film that's been getting some buzz, and actually I have to credit Brian Michael, who is not with us right now. He is actually setting up porta potties in Madras for the eclipse.
Getting ready for the eclipse.
Yeah, so by
Good
the
job,
time,
Bri.
yeah, so yeah, good job. Thank you for helping out. But he actually was one who told me about this movie.
Okay.
He said, "Oh, if you want a good zombie movie, Train to Busan." And then when you and I were discussing what should we watch, and I said, "Well, I know you like horror movies like I do, or thrillers," and so I thought this would be right up your alley. So I'm curious to see what you thought. We watched this with a group of people, and several people of the group I could tell were like on the edge of their seats. There was lots of gasps. And, this is like a non-stop roller. Once they get on the train, this movie does not let up. I mean, not even once. I mean, you keep thinking, God, are they going to let us take a breath? You kind of almost want to breather a little bit, but it's just tension-filled, edge of your seat from non-stop. The zombies, I thought, were really well done and pretty cool looking overall.
Yeah,
a little different than what we've always seen. They were sort of conveniently dumb when they needed them to be dumb, but you see that in a lot of horror movies.
They're mostly fast-moving.
Mostly faster
they're
moving.
the fast-moving sort.
Yeah, they do run. And they look kind of like bugs. It reminded me a little bit of World War Z, where it would just be like swarms of them all of a sudden, and then almost look like a mass of insects. Yeah, like big piles of zombies.
Very fast outbreak.
Yeah, but there is a kind of a nice story to this, in that the young daughter is this very empathetic, kind soul, and her dad has sort of lost his way a little bit. He's again, in banking or finance. He's in some sort of industry that's
businessman,
and she feels like he's sort of lost his soul a little bit. And this movie is about him sort of regaining that and finding kindness to other people. So there has a nice little message underneath, being kind to your fellow people, and what happens to those on the train who are not so kind. There is a little bit of satisfaction in the audience when they get to see what happens to those people, as that happens in a zombie movie. I'm curious what you thought of it.
So I really, really wanted to like this movie, and I did not.
You didn't like it?
I mean, I didn't hate it, but I did not like it. I didn't like it as much as a lot of people did in our group. Some of them were talking about, this is one of the best zombie movies I've seen in a long time, and oh my gosh. And I was like, whoa, did we just watch 2 different movies?
Huh. I liked it. I think it was the best zombie movie I've seen.
I can't recommend it.
Wow.
I don't.
So why? You have to here's your...
There's a lot. How much time we got left?
A couple minutes. Go ahead.
All right.
To name a few things.
So, I mean, the movie was super cliche of the horror genre, which I can look past a lot of the times. And in fact, I was like, okay, yeah, the person falls down when danger is coming, and okay, this is happening. All right, that's a little cliche, and all right, I can look past that because it's a good budget. And then it just kept going and falling in these little traps of these horror films. And then there's this one point at the end, and it just snapped for me. I'm like, you know what? That's it. I do not like this movie anymore. I can tell you the scene. I'll tell you off camera because it's toward the end. And I was like, that's it. I am done with this movie. And from then on, any emotional investment I had in any character was gone. I was just like, I do not care.
So there was a certain scene, and it was because the scene was cliched?
It's just cliche, and it was just so, I can't stand a movie. I can take cliches of the person falling down. The
you
zombies,
like Marvel comic movies. You must like
there's
cliches.
one point where the zombies, take 20 minutes to manifest, and then all of a sudden they take 5 seconds to manifest.
Yeah, I noticed
those
that
kinds
too.
of things bother me, but I can look past them.
Right.
But when characters the whole movie builds up on this person's character. They're this kind of person. They're smart, or they're not smart, or they're thoughtful, or they're not thoughtful, and then they just do something completely out of character that doesn't make sense, and is totally illogical, and it's like, this I can't do it anymore. When these their characters
it's interesting.
Don't live up to
I was able to just go
anything.
with it. I mean, I thought it was a 3-star movie.
Anymore.
I didn't think it was a masterpiece. Did you see? We reviewed it on the show a few months ago. The Girl with All the Gifts.
I have not seen it.
So that is a zombie movie out of England with Glenn Close, and it is really, really good. And it is not cliched like this one. And that's one Brian and I reviewed. He gave it 4 stars. I gave it 3.5. And it's a much better zombie movie than this one. But I felt like this was entertaining enough and action-packed enough, and it kept my interest. And I was rooting for the character, the main character, so I felt like I could recommend it and give it 3 stars.
Yeah.
And it does have some of the cliches you talked about. I don't think it bugged me as much though, because I feel like in horror movies you're used to a certain amount as long as it's doing something different.
I can look past a lot, but like I said, there was one point where it just snapped, and that was it. I was done after. I was just like, okay, that's too much. That's enough.
Interesting.
And I even watched it, the second half of it again on my lunch break today. I was like, maybe I was just in a really bad mood, but actually we were with a really good group of friends, and it was a lot of fun, so that usually helps the mood.
Yeah.
And I was just like,
you did stay awake.
I stayed awake, so I kept me awake. So that's why it gets 2.5 versus 2.
Oh, it gets 2.5 stars.
A low 2.5.
A low 2.5. What is it with these low 2.5? I feel like you should just be shaving half a star off. Okay, well, I'm giving it 3.
1.5.
Okay, I'm giving it 3. Oh, you liked it. Now it went from 2.5 to 1.5? How can you go drop it a full star? Your rating system is off the charts, man. What is going on?
It's 2.5.
Okay, it's 2.5. But yeah, I mean, I liked it enough to recommend it. Like I said, for fun, if you like zombie movies, but definitely not like one of the better ones. You would say no. Yeah. I would say if you had a choice, though, rent Girl with All the Gifts, which unfortunately is not on. Well, it might be on streaming somewhere. Actually, it is on streaming somewhere. Okay. So if you could find Girl with All the Gifts, I would recommend that over this one. But this one is still really good. Good, but not so much for you. Okay, so we'll wrap up. Thank you for being on the show, Brian.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
We'll have you on more often since I got to hear you like to. Well, I got to spend so much time with you. That was actually the most fun about this.
It was a lot of fun, yeah.
We saw all the movies together. So
absolutely.
Otherwise, it'd be like months would go by I don't see you. But now I saw you like 4 times in 2 weeks. So it's fun.
We're besties.
Yeah, exactly. So to wrap up, Detroit, Brian gives 4 stars, and I'm giving 3.5. So he says it's one of the best of the year. It might make his top 10.
Better than the Marvel movies.
You just had to. Then all of them. They were all better than Detroit.
All of them.
Oh, come on.
I said Detroit was barely better than the Marvel movies.
Oh, you said Detroit was barely better than all the Marvel movies. Okay. Dark Tower, we both cannot recommend. Glass Castle, we recommend. And Train to Busan, we split on. Okay, so you can check us out on our website at realfilmsnobs.com. You can listen to us on KMUZ. You can watch us on YouTube as well as on Silverton Scan TV and Corvallis Access Media. I'd like to thank our wonderful sponsors and our fantastic crew, and of course Brian Hart for being on the show.
Thanks,
Have a great day and great movies.